I walked into my cousin's birthday party with butterflies in my stomach. No fancy dress, no expensive gift, just me in my discount store outfit clutching a handmade card. It was Vanessa who spotted me first, her diamond bracelet catching the light as she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh look, Elena's here. I doubt she can afford to chip in for the yacht rental we're discussing." The room went quiet. I reached into my purse and slid out the platinum Amex card my late grandfather had secretly arranged for me. Sometimes revenge doesn't need words, just the right timing. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel glittered with champagne flutes and designer outfits. My cousin Rachel's 30th birthday celebration was exactly what you'd expect from the golden child of the Crawford family: extravagant, excessive, and exclusive. I debated not coming at all, but something inside me couldn't give my family another reason to whisper about my absence. I stood near the entrance, taking a deep breath before fully committing to walking into the lion's den. My simple black dress had cost me exactly $89.99 from a department store sale rack, but I'd spent hours altering it to look more expensive than it was. My hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, the kind that says, "I chose this style," rather than, "I couldn't afford a blowout." The Crawford family gatherings had always been competitions disguised as celebrations. Who had the newest car, the most impressive job title, the most expensive vacation photos to share? In this particular Olympic event of wealth flaunting, I had always been awarded last place without even competing. "Elena." My Aunt Margaret's voice carried across the room with practiced enthusiasm that never quite reached her eyes. "We weren't sure you'd make it." What she meant was, we weren't sure you could afford to come. The unspoken part hung in the air between us. "I wouldn't miss Rachel's birthday," I replied, kissing her cheek lightly. Her perfume smelled like money, the kind that comes in bottles without price tags. My sister Vanessa appeared beside her, champagne in hand, designer purse dangling from her wrist. For years older than me, she had followed perfectly in our father's footsteps: business school, finance job, marriage to a banker with old money. I had chosen art school, then graphic design, then struggling freelancer status. In my family's eyes, these choices were synonymous with failure. "Elena, darling," Vanessa's smile was practiced, perfected in boardrooms where she was often the only woman. "So glad you could make it. Did you park in the hotel garage? It's frightfully expensive, but I can spot you the cash if you need." This was how it always began, small cuts disguised as concern. I'd grown up with these paper cuts to my dignity. Small enough that complaining would seem petty, deep enough to leave invisible scars. "I took an Uber," I said simply. "Another mistake." Her eyebrows raised slightly, clearly I couldn't even afford a car. She didn't need to know that mine was in the shop, and the repair bill had nearly emptied my checking account. I moved through the party like a ghost, smiling at relatives who barely remembered my name, accepting the standard questions about my little drawing business and whether I had met someone yet. The answers were always disappointing to them. Business was steady but small, and no, there was no prospective husband on the horizon to save me from my modest life. The ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland theme. Rachel's birthday was in July, but she had always wanted a snow-themed party. Ice sculptures dripped elegantly into silver trays, white orchids cascaded from ceiling installations, and a champagne fountain bubbled in the corner. I didn't want to think about what it all cost. I found my cousin by the gift table, surrounded by a circle of admirers. Rachel had always been kind to me, in her distracted way. We had been close as children before family expectations had separated us into different categories, her as the achiever, me as the disappointment. "Elena." She embraced me warmly, genuine pleasure in her eyes. "I'm so happy you came." I handed her the small gift I'd brought, a handmade card with a detailed illustration of her childhood home, the one she'd always said she missed after her parents upgraded to their mansion. Inside was a gift card for her favorite coffee shop. It wasn't much, but it was personal. "This is beautiful," she said, tracing the drawing with her finger. "You're so talented." For a moment, I felt seen. Then my Uncle Jeffrey appeared, clapping his hands together to gather everyone's attention. "Time for the big announcement," he boomed, his voice carrying the authority of old money and unchallenged success. "As many of you know, we've been planning something special for our Rachel's milestone birthday." The crowd hushed in anticipation. Jeffrey beamed with pride. We've arranged for an exclusive yacht charter in the Mediterranean next month. 2 weeks sailing the Italian and French coasts, with stops at the most exclusive ports. Rachel will be taking 20 of her closest friends and family members. The room erupted in excitement. Rachel squealed in delight, jumping up and down. Like the little girl I remembered from summers at our grandparents' lake house. This is going to be incredible, Vanessa sidled up beside me, champagne glass refilled. Of course, we'll all need to chip in for the extras. Food and alcohol alone for 20 people for 2 weeks is going to cost a fortune. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I nodded, stomach sinking. Here it came. Rachel wants you to come, she continued, eyeing me over her glass. But honestly, Elena, these trips run about $15,000 per person once everything is factored in. I just don't want you to feel uncomfortable when you can't afford your share. Maybe it's better if you sit this one out. The room suddenly felt too warm, too loud. I had $742.18 in my checking account and was waiting on 3 clients to pay their overdue invoices. Vanessa knew this. The whole family knew my financial situation. They made sure to keep tabs on my struggles, not out of concern but for comparison. I understand, I said quietly. It's nothing personal. Vanessa placed her hand on my arm in mock sympathy. We just know your little design business isn't exactly lucrative. Rachel will understand. She knows you can't afford this. Something in me snapped. Not with anger, but with clarity. I was tired of being the family charity case, the cautionary tale, the whispered about failure. Actually, I heard myself saying, I'd love to join the trip. Count me in. Vanessa's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose in surprise. Elena, be realistic. This isn't like splitting a dinner bill that you can put on your maxed out credit card. This is serious money. I'm aware of what it costs, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I said I'm in. She laughed, a short, dismissive sound that drew the attention of my father and uncle standing nearby. What's happening here? My father asked, his expression already prepared for disappointment where I was concerned. Elena thinks she can join the yacht trip, Vanessa explained, amusement dancing in her eyes. My father's face softened into that particular expression of pity I had grown to hate. Honey, this is an expensive excursion. Maybe next time. Next time. Always next time. Next time I'd have more money. Next time I'd have made better choices. Next time I'd be worthy of inclusion. The conversation around us had quieted. I could feel eyes on me, the familiar weight of family judgment. Rachel looked uncomfortable, caught between excitement for her gift and embarrassment at my public exclusion. I can afford it, I said, louder than I intended. My Uncle Jeffrey chuckled. Elena, no one's judging your life choices, but let's be practical. Your little drawing hobby, it's a design business, I corrected, heat rising in my cheeks. Whatever it is, he continued, we all know it doesn't generate the kind of income needed for a luxury yacht charter. There's no shame in that. But there was shame. They made sure of it. Every family gathering, every holiday, every birthday celebration. There was always the subtle reminder that I had chosen wrong, aimed too low, failed to live up to the Crawford name. I reached into my purse, fingers trembling slightly, and pulled out the sleek metal card I rarely used. The Platinum American Express caught the light as I placed it on the table beside Rachel's gifts. I can pay my share now, if you'd prefer. I said quietly. In full. The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. My father's eyes widened in confusion. Uncle Jeffrey stared at the card like it might be counterfeit. Where did you get that? Vanessa finally asked, voice sharp with disbelief. The story of how that card came to be in my possession was not one I had planned to share tonight. It wasn't meant to be a dramatic reveal at my cousin's birthday party. But they had pushed me here, into this corner, forcing me to either expose my truth or continue accepting their narrative. Grandpa Joseph gave it to me, I said simply. That's impossible, my father interjected. Dad didn't believe in credit cards. He barely trusted banks. I took a deep breath. He arranged it before he died. Along with some other things. Grandpa Joseph had been different from the rest of the Crawfords. Where they valued financial success above all, he had measured worth in other ways. He had been the only one who seemed genuinely interested in my art, who had visited my first gallery showing when the rest of the family had sent polite excuses. What other things? My father demanded, his voice taking on the edge it always had when business matters were concerned. Rachel looked increasingly uncomfortable. Maybe we should discuss this later? It's supposed to be a celebration. But it was too late. The dam had broken, and 5 years of secrets were about to flood the pristine ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel. He left me his portfolio, I said quietly. The tech investments, specifically. My grandfather had been old-fashioned in many ways, but surprisingly forward-thinking in others. While the family business had been passed to my father and uncle, the proper heirs in everyone's estimation, Grandpa Joseph had quietly built a separate investment portfolio focused on emerging technologies. It wasn't part of the Crawford family holdings. It was his personal project, one he had shared with me during our Sunday visits in the last years of his life. That's ridiculous, Uncle Jeffrey scoffed. Those were just hobby investments. They weren't worth anything. They were worth $18,500 when he died, I acknowledged. Now they're worth considerably more. How much more? Vanessa asked, her voice suddenly quiet. I didn't answer immediately. The number still didn't feel real to me, even after 5 years of watching it grow. I had lived modestly, not touching the principal, working for every dollar I earned through my design business. The portfolio wasn't just money to me, it was the only person in my family who had seen me clearly. Enough, I finally said. Enough that I don't need to justify my place at this table anymore. My father's face had gone pale. Elena, if what you're saying is true, we should discuss this privately. As a family. As a family. Now I was family again. Now I was worth the conversation. There's nothing to discuss, I replied. Grandpa Joseph's wishes were very clear. The portfolio was mine to manage as I saw fit when I turned 25. I'd been doing exactly that for the past 3 years. The silence that followed was broken only by the ambient music still playing cheerfully in the background, oblivious to the tension filling the room. Why didn't you tell us? My father finally asked, hurt coloring his voice. The question struck me as so absurd that I almost laughed. Why hadn't I told them? The same people who had dismissed my career choices, who had excluded me from family investments, who had made me feel like an outsider at every opportunity. Would it have changed anything? I asked simply. No one had an answer for that. Rachel, always the peacemaker, stepped forward and linked her arm through mine. Well, I for one am thrilled that Elena will be joining us on the yacht. It wouldn't be the same without her. The party resumed its rhythm, but something had shifted. I could feel it in the way my relatives glanced at me, reassessing, recalculating. The platinum Amex remained on the table, a metallic declaration of independence I had never intended to make so publicly. Vanessa cornered me by the dessert table later, her voice low and urgent. How much is in that portfolio, Elena? Really? I selected a chocolate-covered strawberry before answering. Enough that I could buy the yacht instead of just chartering it. Her eyes widened. That's not possible. Those tech companies Grandpa invested in, they were startups, long shots. Some failed, I acknowledged. But 3 went public. And 1 was acquired by Google last year. The acquisition had been the tipping point, transforming what had been a comfortable safety net into genuine wealth. I had watched the numbers climb from my tiny apartment, sitting at the second-hand desk where I still ran my design business. And you've just been sitting on this? Living in that cramped apartment, driving that old car, wearing clothes from department stores? She shook her head in disbelief. Why? It was a question I had asked myself many times. The truth was complicated. The money didn't change who I am, I said finally. I still love design. I still want to earn my own way. And I didn't want anyone to see me differently just because of a number in my bank account. But you could have had everything, Vanessa insisted. The right address, the right car, the right connections. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The perfect hair, the designer dress, the carefully constructed image of success. And for the first time, I wondered if she was happy. I have everything I need, I told her. And now, if you'll excuse me, I should say goodnight to Rachel. I have an early client meeting tomorrow. I left Vanessa standing by the dessert table, confusion etched across her features. As I made my way through the crowd, I felt lighter somehow. The secret I had carried for years was out, and while it hadn't been revealed the way I might have chosen, there was relief in no longer hiding. Rachel hugged me tightly before I left. I'm sorry about what happened, she whispered. But I'm so happy you're coming on the trip. Me too, I said, and meant it. I stepped out of the Westbrook Hotel into the cool evening air. The valet asked if I needed my car brought around, and I shook my head. I'll take an Uber, I said, pulling out my phone. Not because I couldn't afford parking, but because my car was still in the shop. Some things hadn't changed. I was still Elena Crawford, freelance designer who worked too many hours and occasionally forgot to eat lunch when deep in a project. The difference was that now my family knew what I had known for years, that my worth wasn't determined by their measuring stick. As I waited for my ride, I thought about what would come next. The questions, the sudden interest in my life, the invitations that would inevitably follow. The family would want to bring me back into the fold now, to claim me as one of their success stories. But I had built a life outside their definition of success. I had friends who knew nothing about my family's wealth or my own hidden resources, people who liked me for my humor, my creativity, my loyalty. I had clients who valued my work, not my last name. I had a small but meaningful existence that was entirely of my own making. The Uber pulled up to the curb. As I settled into the back seat, my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "We need to talk. Breakfast tomorrow?" I stared at the message for a long moment. 5 years ago, I would have jumped at the invitation, desperate for his approval, his inclusion. Now, I felt only a calm certainty that whatever came next would be on my terms. "Sorry," I texted back. "I have clients tomorrow. How about next week?" I put my phone away without waiting for his response. Outside the car window, the city lights blurred together as we drove toward my apartment, my small, beloved space filled with art and books and evidence of a life well lived, if not extravagantly so. Tomorrow would bring changes. The family dynamics would shift, recalibrate around this new reality. But tonight, I was still just Elena, heading home after a party where for once, I had not been the smallest person in the room. My apartment looked different that night as I unlocked the door. Not because anything had changed physically, the same secondhand furniture still filled the space, the same half-finished design projects were spread across my desk, the same cheap IKEA lamp cast warm light across the worn hardwood floor. But revealing my secret had shifted something inside me, making everything look slightly altered, as if I was seeing my life through new eyes. I dropped my keys on the counter and kicked off my shoes. The apartment was small but intentional, every piece chosen carefully, every corner reflecting something about who I was. Not rich, not poor, just Elena. The Elena I had chosen to be, not the one my family had tried to mold. The blinking light on my answering machine showed 7 new messages. That was unusual. I pressed play and listened as Vanessa's voice filled the room, followed by my father's, then my uncle's. Word had spread quickly after I'd left the party. They all wanted to talk, to understand, to reconnect. Funny how a platinum card could suddenly make me worth reconnecting with. I deleted the messages one by one without responding. Tonight wasn't about them. I walked to my bookshelf and pulled out an old leather-bound photo album, the kind people hardly kept anymore in this digital age. Inside were pictures of Grandpa Joseph, not the formal portraits that hung in the family homes, but candid shots of him laughing, working in his garden, teaching me to fish at the lake house. The last photo was my favorite, Grandpa sitting at his desk, glasses perched on his nose, looking up at the camera with a mischievous smile. Behind him was a wall of stock certificates, many for companies no one believed in at the time. That photo had been taken the day he first told me about his hobby investments, as he called them. "The family thinks I'm crazy," he had said, eyes twinkling. "Throwing good money after bad ideas. But you understand, don't you, Elena? You see what others miss." I had been 22 then, fresh out of art school, struggling to build my design business while my family pushed me toward real jobs, with steady paychecks and clear advancement paths. Grandpa Joseph was the only one who never questioned my choices, who saw my creativity as an asset rather than a liability. 3 months after that photo was taken, he was gone. Heart attack, sudden and unexpected. The family had mourned appropriately, divided his visible assets according to his will, and moved on. No one had mentioned the tech portfolio. No one had known about it except his lawyer and me. I closed the album and reached for my laptop. Opening my investment account, I looked at the numbers that had caused such a stir tonight. The original $18,500 had grown to just over $4. 7 million. Not the billions that define the ultra-wealthy, but more than enough to change my life completely. If I wanted it changed. But I hadn't touched it, except for setting up the platinum Amex for emergencies and larger business expenses. The card I rarely used, the card that had finally forced my family to see me differently. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. My apartment overlooked a small park where, during the day, children played and dogs chased balls. At night, it was peaceful, empty except for the occasional late-night dog walker. I watched a couple stroll hand in hand along the path, their laughter carrying up to my window. My phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel. I had no idea, Elena, about any of it. I wish you'd told me. Rachel, at least, deserved a response. Nothing to tell, I typed back. I'm still me. But you could have shut Vanessa up years ago, came her quick reply. You could have shown them all. Could have. Should have. The narrative was already shifting, repositioning me as the secret victor who had foolishly hidden her triumph. But that wasn't how I saw it. It wasn't about winning, I texted back. It was about building something that was mine. Rachel sent back a confused emoji. She didn't understand yet. Maybe she never would. The Crawford family measured success in acquisitions, houses, cars, companies, connections. The idea of building something meaningful rather than impressive was foreign to them. I put my phone on silent and got ready for bed. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more family members suddenly interested in my life, more opportunities to explain myself. But tonight, I wanted the comfort of my routine, brushing my teeth at the chipped porcelain sink, washing my face with the drugstore cleanser that worked better than my sister's $200 creams, settling into sheets that were Target's finest but felt like home. The meeting with my first client the next morning went smoothly. Bianca ran a small bakery that was expanding into a second location, and she needed updated branding to match her growing business. She knew nothing about the Crawfords or their money or the scene at last night's party. To her, I was simply Elena the designer, reliable and creative and worth every penny of my reasonable rates. These are perfect, she said, looking through the logo variations I'd prepared. Exactly what I was hoping for. We spent an hour finalizing details, discussing color schemes and implementation. Normal work. My work. Not family drama or sudden wealth or the complications that came with both. As Bianca left, my phone buzzed. With another call from my father. Fourth one today. I sent it to voicemail and turned to my next project, but concentration was difficult. The secret was out now, rippling through my carefully constructed life, changing how people saw me whether I wanted it or not. By lunchtime, I'd made little progress on my work. The constant interruptions from family members were making it impossible to focus. I needed advice from someone who wasn't a Crawford, someone who understood me before all of this. I called Maya, my best friend since college. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful as always. Hey stranger. I was just thinking about you. Are you free for lunch? I asked. I need to talk. 20 minutes later, we were sitting at our favorite cafe, a hole-in-the-wall place with mismatched chairs and the best soup in the city. Maya listened without interrupting as I told her everything, the party, the yacht announcement, Vanessa's dismissal, the platinum Amex reveal, and the aftermath. When I finished, she stirred her soup thoughtfully. So let me get this straight. You've been secretly rich for 3 years, living in your tiny apartment, driving that car that breaks down every other month, and wearing clothes from Target? I shrugged. I'm not rich. Not by Crawford standards. Maya rolled her eyes. Elena, nearly $5 million is rich by normal human standards. Most people would have bought a penthouse and a sports car the second that money hit their account. That's not me, I said simply. I know it's not. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's why we're friends. But I don't understand why you kept it a secret from everyone. Even me. I considered her question carefully. Maya deserved honesty. At first, it didn't seem real. The money was mostly on paper, tied up in stocks that could have crashed any day. By the time it became substantial, I was used to living my life the way it was. And then, I trailed off. Then what? Maya prompted. Then I realized I was happier being judged for who I really was, not for a number in my bank account. With my family, money is the only measure of success. Once they knew I had it, nothing else about me would matter anymore. Maya nodded slowly. And now they know. And now they know, I echoed. Since last night, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Suddenly I'm invited to family board meetings and investment discussions. My uncle wants my fresh perspective on the Family business. My sister wants to introduce me to her financial advisor. I stabbed at my salad. 3 years of silence, and now they can't talk to me enough. So what are you going to do? That was the question I'd been avoiding all morning. What now? The simple life I'd built was real to me, more real than the Crawford wealth or expectations. My design business brought me genuine satisfaction. My small apartment felt like home in a way the family's sprawling houses never had. The friends I'd made, like Maya, cared about me, not my last name or my bank balance. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore them all, keep living exactly as I have been. But another part wants to rub their faces in it, Maya suggested with a grin. I laughed despite myself. Maybe a little. But mostly, I just want to use this moment to redefine the relationship on my terms. I've spent my whole life being the family disappointment. Maybe now I can be something else, not because of the money, but because they're finally willing to see me clearly. Maya considered this. Just be careful. People don't change overnight, even when millions of dollars are involved. Especially when millions of dollars are involved. She was right, of course. Money complicated everything, revealed true characters, brought out both the best and worst in people. I'd seen it happen in my family for years, the calculations behind every interaction, the subtle shifts in treatment based on financial status. Now I was on the other side of that equation. After lunch, I walked back to my apartment, taking the long route through the park. The fresh air helped clear my head, giving me space to think about what I really wanted from this new chapter. By the time I reached my building, I had made a decision. I wouldn't run from my family, but I wouldn't rush into their open arms either. I would engage on my own terms, maintaining the life I had built while allowing them the chance to know the real Elena, if they were genuinely interested. I spent the afternoon catching up on the work I'd neglected that morning, losing myself in the familiar comfort of design problems and creative solutions. Around 6, I finally answered one of my father's calls. Elena, he sounded relieved. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been working, Dad. I have clients who depend on me. A pause. Yes, of course. Your design work. The slight hesitation revealed everything about how he still viewed my career, despite the financial revelation. My design business. I corrected gently. What can I help you with? I thought we should talk. About your grandfather, about the portfolio, about your place in the family business moving forward. My place in the family business. As if I'd earned it overnight, as if my value had suddenly increased with my bank balance. I appreciate that, I said carefully. But I need you to understand something first. My life isn't changing just because. You know about my financial situation now. I'm still a designer. That's still my priority. Elena, be reasonable. With your inheritance, you don't need to work drawing logos for bakeries anymore. You could take a proper position with Crawford Holdings. Your uncle and I have been discussing possibilities all day. I closed my eyes, counting to 10 silently. Some things hadn't changed at all. That's not what I want, Dad. It never has been. Then what do you want? He sounded genuinely confused, unable to comprehend turning down the Crawford name and all it represented. What did I want? The question echoed in my mind. Not their approval, I'd stopped seeking that years ago. Not their validation, I'd found that within myself. Not even their understanding, some gaps might be too wide to bridge. I want respect, I said finally. Not because of Grandpa's money, but for the choices I've made and the life I've built. I want to be seen for who I am. Not what I'm worth. Silence stretched between us, filled with 30 years of misunderstandings and missed connections. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, less certain. I don't know if I know how to do that, Elena. His honesty surprised me. It was perhaps the most genuine thing he'd said to me in years. Maybe we can both learn, I offered. But not overnight, and not because of money. We agreed to meet for dinner the following week, just the two of us, away from the family dynamics and expectations. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was a start. After hanging up, I felt a strange mixture of hope and wariness. People didn't change easily, especially people like my father who had spent a lifetime defining success in very specific terms. But maybe, just maybe, this disruption would create space for something new between us. My doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Vanessa standing in the hallway, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I opened the door, saying nothing, waiting for her to explain her presence. "Nice building," she said, glancing around the hallway with the barely concealed judgment I was accustomed to. "Very charming. What do you want, Vanessa?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Can I come in? I'd rather not have this conversation in the hallway." I stepped aside, allowing her into my apartment. Watching her take in my space, the artwork on the walls, the modest furniture, the design studio set up in the corner, I realized this was the first time she'd ever visited me here. In 3 years, she had never once made the effort to see where or how I lived. "It's nicer than I expected," she admitted, running her finger along my bookshelf. "Smaller, but nice." "Thank you for the backhanded compliment." I crossed my arms. "Again, what do you want?" Vanessa sighed, perching on the edge of my sofa like she was afraid it might soil her designer slacks. "I wanted to understand. All this time, you've had millions sitting in accounts, and you've chosen to live like this." She gestured around the apartment. "Why? To prove some point? To make us feel bad?" The question was so Vanessa, assuming my choices must somehow revolve around the family, around her. "Not everything is about you," I said quietly. "I live this way because it makes me happy. Because I like my work, I like my apartment, I like building something that's mine." "But you could have had so much more." "More what? More square footage? More status symbols? More approval from people who only value wealth?" Vanessa flinched as if I'd slapped her. "That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time anyone in our family asked about my work because they were genuinely interested? When was the last time you invited me to something because you wanted me there, not because obligation required it?" She had no answer, which was answer enough. "The money didn't change who I am," I continued more gently. "And it doesn't change how I want to live. The only difference is now you all know about it." Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, studying me with new eyes. "I don't understand you," she finally said. "I've never understood you." "I know." I smiled slightly. "But you could try. That's why you're here, isn't it? To try?" Something shifted in her expression, a softening, a recognition. "Maybe. Yes." I moved to the kitchen. "Would you like some tea? Or I have wine." "Wine would be good." As I poured 2 glasses of the modestly priced red I kept for occasions, I felt a strange sense of possibility. Not forgiveness, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of a real relationship with my sister, one based on who we were rather than what we owned. We talked for hours that night, really talked, perhaps for the first time as adults. Vanessa asked about my design work, about my clients, about my creative process. I asked about her job, her marriage, her true feelings about the path she'd chosen. By the time she left, something had shifted between us. Not healed, not completely, but changed. As I closed the door behind her, I realized that the revelation of my financial status had created an opening, a crack in the family narrative that had defined our relationship for so long. That night, I lay awake thinking about the strange journey that had brought me here. Grandpa Joseph's secret gift hadn't just been financial security, it had been the freedom to build a life on my own terms, to discover what truly mattered to me outside the Crawford definition of success. The money itself had never been the point. It was what it represented: independence, choice, the ability to say no to paths that didn't fit who I was. For 3 years, I had guarded that freedom carefully, keeping it separate from my family's expectations and judgments. Now the worlds were colliding, and I would need to find a new balance, maintaining my independence while perhaps building bridges I had long thought impossible. It wouldn't be easy. Old patterns didn't disappear overnight, and the Crawfords had generations of entrenched beliefs about what constituted a successful life. But as I drifted toward sleep, I felt a cautious optimism. Not because my family suddenly valued me, their renewed interest was still too closely tied to my unexpected wealth for that, but because I valued myself enough to engage with them on my own terms. The real gift of Grandpa Joseph's inheritance wasn't the money. It was the confidence to know my worth had never depended on it. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing on the gleaming deck of the Aurora, a 150-foot luxury yacht cutting through the blue waters of the Mediterranean. The Italian coastline stretched before us, dotted with colorful buildings that climbed up hillsides like artwork come to life. I breathed in the salt air, feeling the gentle rocking of the boat beneath my feet, still not quite believing I was here. "Champagne, miss?" A uniformed staff member appeared at my elbow, offering a tray of flutes. Thank you. I took one, smiling. 5 years ago, I would have been intimidated by this level of service, would have felt like an imposter among the wealthy guests. Now I felt comfortable. Not because I could afford it, but because I understood that it was just another experience, neither defining me nor diminishing me. There you are. Rachel bounded across the deck, her sundress fluttering in the breeze. Isn't this amazing? I still can't believe Dad arranged all this. I clinked my glass against hers. It's beautiful. Thank you for including me. Are you kidding? You're the highlight of this trip. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. Especially since you're the only one who isn't constantly talking about investment strategies and market projections. The family has been unbearable lately. I laughed. Some things never change. But some things do. Rachel's expression grew more serious. You've changed, Elena. Not just because of the money thing. You seem, I don't know, more centered somehow. Like you know exactly who you are. Her observation caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. The past 2 weeks had been a whirlwind of family meetings, revised invitations, and adjusted expectations. Through it all, I had maintained the boundaries of my life, still working with my clients, still living in my apartment, still being Elena. But with a new certainty, a quiet confidence that came from finally being seen. I just stopped trying to be someone I'm not, I said simply. Rachel nodded thoughtfully. I envy that. Sometimes I feel like I'm still trying to figure out who I am beneath all the expectations. It was the most honest thing she'd ever shared with me. Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared, looking every inch the successful executive even on vacation in her designer swimsuit and perfectly styled hair. There you two are. Dad's looking for you, Rachel. Something about the dinner. Arrangements for tonight. She waited until Rachel had gone before turning to me. How are you settling in? Fine. I gestured to the spectacular view. Hard not to enjoy this. Vanessa nodded, uncharacteristically hesitant. Since our conversation in my apartment, something had shifted between us, not friendship exactly, but a tentative truce. I wanted to talk to you about something. A business proposition, actually. I stifled a sigh. Of course. In the Crawford world, relationships were often built through business connections. What kind of proposition? Crawford Holdings is launching a new division focused on sustainable luxury developments. We need a creative director to oversee all the branding, marketing design, environmental graphics, everything that shapes how people experience our properties. I blinked, surprised. This wasn't what I had expected. And you thought of me? I showed the board your portfolio. Last week. The work you did for that boutique hotel chain in Portland, the rebrand for the eco-friendly clothing line. You have exactly the aesthetic sensibility we're looking for. I was momentarily speechless. Vanessa had looked at my work? Really looked at it, not just dismissed it as my little drawing hobby? It would be a significant opportunity, she continued, mistaking my silence for hesitation. Executive-level position, complete creative control, substantial equity options. We'd want you to build your own team, of course. The old Elena would have jumped at this chance, the opportunity to finally prove herself to the family, to be accepted into the Crawford business world on her own merits. But I wasn't that person anymore. I'm flattered, Vanessa. Really. But I've built something I'm proud of with my independent studio. I'm not looking to give that up. Her perfect eyebrows drew together in confusion. You wouldn't have to give it up entirely. You could bring your existing clients under the Crawford umbrella, continue those relationships while expanding your scope. I shook my head. That's not how it works. My clients choose me because I'm independent, because I give them personalized attention. Becoming part of Crawford Holdings would change that relationship fundamentally. But this is a chance to do something bigger, Elena. To have real impact. I already have real impact, I replied, not unkindly. Just on a scale that makes sense for me. Vanessa studied me for a long moment, clearly trying to understand my perspective. In her world, bigger always meant better. Success was measured in growth, in expansion, in climbing to the next level. The idea that someone might deliberately choose to stay small, to prioritize autonomy over scale, was foreign to her. Think about it, at least, she finally asked. The offer stands. We're prepared to be very generous. I promised to consider it, though I already knew my answer. As she walked away, I turned back to the sparkling water, thinking about paths not taken and choices that defined us. That evening, dinner was served on the upper deck as the sun set behind the cliffs of Positano. The entire extended family gathered around a long table adorned with candles and fresh flowers. I found myself seated between my father and Uncle Jeffrey, directly across from Vanessa and her husband, Blake. The conversation flowed naturally to business, as it always did at Crawford gatherings. My father and uncle debated market projections while Vanessa's husband explained his latest investment strategy to anyone who would listen. I remained quiet, sipping my wine and enjoying the spectacular pasta prepared by the yacht chef. Elena. Uncle Jeffrey turned to me suddenly. What do you make of the tech sector right now? Given your grandfather's portfolio, you must have some insights. The table quieted. This was new territory, a Crawford family member asking for my opinion on financial matters. I think most people are looking in the wrong places, I said. After a moment. Everyone's focused on the obvious players, the companies making headlines. But the real innovation is happening in smaller firms solving specific problems that the giants haven't recognized yet. Such as, my father prompted, genuinely curious. I told them about a small company I'd invested in 6 months ago. 1. Developing water purification technology that could operate without electricity. Not flashy, not sexy, but potentially world-changing for communities without reliable power grids. The return potential is significant, I explained, but more importantly, it's addressing a fundamental human need. That's what Grandpa Joseph taught me to look for, not just growth for growth's sake, but meaningful solutions that improve lives. A thoughtful silence followed. I had spoken their language, returns, growth potential, market positioning, but I had also introduced something else, something that had been missing from Crawford business discussions for as long as I could. Remember, purpose. Joseph always was an idealist, Uncle Jeffrey finally said, but his tone was fond rather than dismissive. He believed business could be more than just profit. He was right, I said simply. My father studied me with new eyes. You really did learn from him, didn't you? All those Sundays you spent at his house while the rest of us were at the club. I nodded. He showed me how to see value where others didn't look. The conversation shifted after that, becoming something more nuanced than the usual Crawford business talk. For the first time, I felt truly included, not as a token presence, not as a charity case, but as someone with something valuable to contribute. Later, as the party broke into smaller groups enjoying after-dinner drinks, my father joined me at the railing where I stood watching the lights of the coastal town twinkle in the distance. Vanessa told me about her offer, he said without preamble. The creative director position. I sighed. I'm not taking it, Dad. I know. He surprised me by chuckling. I told her you wouldn't. Now it was my turn to be surprised. You did? He nodded, looking out at the dark water. You've never wanted what we wanted for you. I used to think that was a failing, yours or ours, I wasn't sure. Now I'm starting to think it might have been wisdom. The admission cost him something. I could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the careful way he chose his words. My father had built his life around certain truths: bigger was better, wealth equaled worth, the Crawford name opened doors that mattered. To question any of these, even slightly, was to question his entire value system. I'm not rejecting everything you built, Dad, I said gently. I'm just choosing a different path. With different measures of success. Yes. He was quiet for a long moment. Your grandfather once told me I was too focused on the destination to enjoy the journey. I thought it was just another of his philosophical ramblings. He turned to look at me directly. But you understand what he meant, don't you? I think so, I said. It's about finding meaning in the process, not just the outcome. He nodded slowly. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About what all this, he gestured to the yacht, the wealth, the trappings of success surrounding us, is really for. What it's meant to bring us. And I'm not sure I know anymore. He smiled ruefully. That's an uncomfortable realization at my age. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Not a resolution, not a complete understanding, but a beginning. A crack in the foundations of old assumptions, letting in new light. The rest of the yacht trip unfolded in unexpected ways. I spent mornings working remotely on my laptop, maintaining my commitment to my clients even while floating in the Mediterranean. Afternoons were for exploring coastal towns, swimming in crystal-clear coves, and getting to know family members who had previously been little more than familiar strangers. To my surprise, I found myself enjoying their company. Without the pressure to prove my worth or justify my choices, I could see them more clearly, not just as the Crawfords, embodiment of wealth and status, but as individuals with their own strengths and insecurities. Rachel confided her doubts about the law career her parents had chosen for her, revealing a passion for environmental advocacy she'd never pursued. Vanessa's husband Blake, beneath his polished exterior, turned out to have a wicked sense of humor and a talent for origami, of all things. Even Uncle Jeffrey showed unexpected depth when he spoke about the philanthropic foundation he'd recently established but rarely mentioned at family gatherings. They were changing, or perhaps I was finally seeing the parts of them that had always existed beneath the Crawford facade. Either way, something was shifting, like ice breaking up after a long winter. On our last night aboard the Aurora, Rachel organized a casual dinner on the beach, fairy lights strung between posts in the sand, local musicians playing soft acoustic music as waves lapped at the shore. No formal attire, no business talk, just family enjoying each other's company under the stars. I sat cross-legged on a beach blanket, my shoes discarded, a plate of fresh seafood balanced on my knees. My father dropped down beside me, looking strangely relaxed in linen pants rolled up at the ankles, his usual tailored shirt replaced by a simple t-shirt. "I've been meaning to show you something," he said, pulling his phone from his pocket. He scrolled through photos until he found what he was looking for. "This was in your grandfather's study. We found it when we were cleaning out his house after the funeral." He handed me the phone. On the screen was a photo of a framed sketch. A building design, modern and elegant, with sweeping lines and walls of glass that seemed to bring the natural world inside. In the corner was a signature, Elena Crawford, age 14. "I drew that," I said softly, memory rushing back. "Grandpa asked me to design my dream house. I worked on it for weeks." My father nodded. He had it professionally framed. It was hanging right above his desk, where he'd see it every day. I felt tears prick at my eyes. "I didn't know he kept it." "He believed in you long before any of us did," my father said quietly. "Including you, maybe?" I looked up at him, this man who had defined success so narrowly for so long. "Why are you showing me this now?" He was silent for a moment, watching the waves roll in. "Because I'm starting to understand what he saw. Not just talent, though. Obviously you have that. But a different way of measuring what matters." He smiled slightly. "It took me a lot longer than it took him." We sat in comfortable silence after that, listening to the music, watching family members I'd kept at a distance for years laugh and dance and enjoy the simple pleasure of a beautiful evening. Rachel plopped down beside us, sand clinging to her sundress. "This is perfect, isn't it? We should do this every year." "Maybe without the family drama reveal next time," I suggested, smiling to soften the words. She laughed. "Are you kidding? That was the best part. You should have seen Vanessa's face when you pulled out that Amex card. I thought she was going to choke on her champagne." "It wasn't about the card," I said, suddenly needing them to understand. "It was never about the money." My father surprised me by nodding. "It was about being seen. Really seen, for who you are." The simple accuracy of his statement left me momentarily speechless. After all these years, he finally understood. "Well, I see you," Rachel said, bumping her shoulder against mine affectionately. "Card or no card. And I think you're pretty amazing." Later that night, as the party wound down and family members drifted back to the yacht, I stayed behind, sitting alone at the water's edge. The moon cast a silver path across the sea, a road of light leading to the horizon. I thought about paths, taken and not taken, about the strange journey that had brought me here. 3 weeks ago, I had been the family disappointment, the creative one who couldn't seem to find her place in the Crawford world of finance and status. Now I was, what? Still Elena, still a designer, still committed to the life I had built. But also something else, a Crawford who had redefined what that name could mean, at least for myself. The money hadn't changed me. But it had changed how others saw me, creating space for a new kind of relationship with my family. Not perfect, not healed overnight, but evolving in ways I hadn't thought possible. As I walked back to the yacht under the stars, sand between my toes and salt spray in my hair, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, not for the wealth that had reshaped my family's perception, but for the strength I'd found in remaining true to myself through all of it. Grandpa Joseph's gift hadn't been the portfolio, impressive as it was. It had been the example he set, the alternative path he showed was possible, success measured not in acquisitions but in alignment with one's true self. I climbed aboard the Aurora, nodding to the night crew as I made my way to my cabin. Tomorrow, we would return to reality, to my modest apartment, my design studio, my carefully built life. But I would return different somehow, carrying not just the memory of this extraordinary trip, but the knowledge that I could engage with my family on my own terms, neither conforming to their expectations nor cutting myself off from connection. The real wealth, I realized as I drifted toward sleep to the gentle rocking of the yacht, wasn't in bank accounts or portfolios or platinum cards. It was in having the courage to define success for yourself, to build a life that reflected your own values rather than borrowed ones. That was Grandpa Joseph's true legacy. And no matter what came next with the Crawfords, it was one I would honor every day. 6 months after the yacht trip, I sat in the conference room of Crawford Holdings, watching my father and uncle present their quarterly results to the board of directors. As a 15% stakeholder in the family business, courtesy of Grandpa Joseph's tech portfolio, which I had partially converted to family company shares, I now had a seat at this table. Not as the creative one, not as the family charity case, but as Elena Crawford, voting member with ideas and influence of my own. The room looked different from this side of the table. Growing up, I'd glimpsed these meetings only from the outside, seeing the polished wood doors close on important discussions where futures were decided. Now I was on the inside, watching my father click through slides of profit margins and market projections, noting how the other board members nodded and took notes at appropriate moments. And now, my father said, coming to the final section of his presentation, I'd like to introduce a new initiative that Elena has been instrumental in developing. He nodded to me, and I stood, moving to the front of the room with the quiet confidence I'd been building over these past months. Opening my laptop, I connected to the projector and pulled up my presentation. Thank you for the introduction, I said, making eye contact with each board member in turn. Today I want to talk about something that represents both a return to our roots and a step into the future of Crawford Holdings. The screen behind me showed a simple but powerful logo, Crawford Community Designs. Beneath it, the tagline, "Building Spaces That Matter." 50 years ago, when my grandfather founded this company, he didn't start with luxury developments or commercial high-rises, I continued. He started by building homes, affordable, thoughtfully designed spaces for families in neighborhoods that needed renewal. I clicked to the next slide, showing a black and white photo of Grandpa Joseph standing in front of a modest housing development, pride evident in his stance. Somewhere along the way, as the company grew more successful, we moved exclusively into higher-end markets. There were good business reasons for that shift. I nodded acknowledgement to my father and uncle. But we also lost something valuable, our connection to communities that could benefit most from thoughtful design and quality construction. The next slide showed my proposal, a new division focused on mixed-income housing developments, community centers, and public spaces in underserved areas. Not charity projects, but smart investments designed to generate reasonable returns while creating lasting social impact. The numbers work, I said, walking them through the financial projections I'd spent months developing with a team of analysts. And more importantly, this initiative aligns with the vision our founder had for this company, using our resources and expertise to build something meaningful, not just profitable. As I concluded the presentation, the room was quiet. Then my uncle Jeffrey, who had been the most skeptical when I first proposed this idea, leaned forward. I have to admit, Elena, when you first brought this to us, I thought it was idealistic. Nonsense. His tone was gruff but not unkind. But you've done your homework. The numbers are solid, the concept is sound, and... He paused, something softening in his expression. Joseph would have loved it. One by one, the other board members weighed in, asking thoughtful questions, suggesting refinements, but ultimately expressing support. By the end of the meeting, Crawford Community Designs had been approved for initial funding, with me as its director. As the board members filed out, my father lingered behind, waiting until we were alone. That was impressive, he said simply. Thank you. I began gathering my materials, trying not to show how much his approval still meant to me. Not just the presentation, he clarified. The whole concept. Finding a way to honor your grandfather's vision while making it viable in today's market. That took real insight. I looked up, meeting his eyes. I learned from both of you. Grandpa taught me to look for meaning beyond profit. You taught me that good intentions aren't enough, the numbers have to work. A smile touched his lips. I never thought I'd hear you say I taught you anything useful. You'd be surprised, I admitted. I've learned a lot from watching you, even when we disagreed about everything. He laughed at that, a genuine sound I'd heard too rarely in my childhood. We do have a talent for disagreement, don't we? We walked together to the elevator, our relationship still evolving but easier now, built on mutual respect rather than expectations and disappointments. Will you join us for dinner tonight? He asked as we descended to the lobby. Your mother's making that pasta you like. I can't tonight. I have plans with Maya. He nodded, hiding his disappointment poorly. Another time, then. I hesitated, then added, but I'm free on Sunday. Maybe I could come by for lunch? His face brightened. Sunday would be perfect. We parted ways in the lobby, him to his executive car with driver, me to my 10-year-old Volvo that I still hadn't replaced despite my changed financial circumstances. Some habits die hard, and I'd grown attached to the old car's quirks and personality. As I drove across town to my studio, I reflected on how much had changed in 6 months. The revelation of my financial status at Rachel's birthday party had cracked open a door that had seemed permanently closed, creating space for a new kind of relationship with my family. Not perfect, not without friction, but real in a way it had never been before. I pulled up to the converted warehouse building that now housed Jules Reed's studio. After years of working from my apartment, I had finally expanded into a proper commercial space, with room for the 3 junior designers I'd hired to help manage our growing client list. The metal plaque beside the entrance gleamed in the afternoon. Sun, Jules Reed Studio. In quiet I build. Inside, the space hummed with creative energy. Mia, my lead designer, was walking a client through logo concepts at the conference table. Dev was hunched over his tablet, working on illustrations for an environmental campaign. Zoe waved to me from her standing desk where she was finalizing the website for a women's health collective. This was my domain, built from scratch, reflecting my vision and values. Not the Crawford name or connections, but something entirely my own. I had insisted on maintaining this separation even as I took on a role within the family business. Crawford Community Designs would be my bridge between worlds, but this studio remained my foundation. How was the board meeting? Mia asked after. The client left. They approved the initiative. My team exchanged excited glances. They knew how much this project meant to me, not just professionally, but personally. Does this mean we'll be handling the branding for Crawford Community Designs? Dev asked hopefully. I nodded. That's the plan. It'll be a significant contract for us, but we'll need to balance it with our existing clients. I don't want anyone to feel neglected. We can handle it, Zoe assured me. The team structure you put in place is working. Everyone has capacity for new projects. I smiled, pride warming my chest. 6 months ago, I had been a solo practitioner working late nights to meet deadlines. Now I led a team of talented designers who shared my vision and values. Growth on my own terms, at a pace and scale that felt right. I have news too, Mia said, slightly hesitant. That housing nonprofit we did the pro bono work for last year? They received a major grant and want to hire us for a complete rebrand. It would be our biggest nonprofit client yet. This was exactly the kind of work I had hoped to attract when I established the studio, projects with purpose, clients whose missions aligned with our values. The fact that they could now afford our standard rates rather than requiring pro bono work was an added bonus, a sign that our approach was becoming sustainable. That's wonderful, I said. Set up a meeting for next week. I want to hear more about their plans. The afternoon passed in a blur of productive work, client calls, design reviews, strategy sessions for upcoming projects. By 6, the studio was quiet, Dev and Zoe having left for the day, Mia gathering her things to meet friends for dinner. You coming? She asked, pausing at the door. I shook my head, gesturing to my desk where concepts for Crawford Community Designs were spread out. I want to refine these before tomorrow. You go ahead. Don't work too late, she admonished, sounding exactly like the mother hen she was to our little team. After she left, I sat in the quiet studio, surrounded by the evidence of what I'd built. Outside, the city lights began to flicker on as dusk settled. I should have been tired after the intensity of the board meeting, but instead I felt energized, ideas flowing freely as I sketched concepts for the new initiative. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya, still on for drinks at 8? I glanced at the time, 7:15. I had just enough time to finish my current sketch and change before meeting her at our favorite bar. Absolutely, I replied. See you there? I put the finishing touches on the concept, a community center. Design that incorporated elements of the surrounding neighborhood's architectural history, and packed up my materials. As I was about to leave, my phone rang. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. Hello? I answered, curious. Despite our improved relationship, weeknight calls from my sister were unusual. Elena. Her voice sounded strained. Are you busy right now? I'm heading out to meet Maya. Is everything okay? She hesitated. Not really. Blake and I had a fight. A bad one. I'm sitting in my car outside your studio. I saw the lights were still on. This was new territory. In all our years, Vanessa had never come to me with personal problems. Our relationship had been defined by competition and comparison, not confidences. Come up, I said without hesitation. Third floor, end of the hall. Minutes later, I opened the door to find my sister looking decidedly un-Vanessa-like, makeup smudged, hair disheveled, designer blazer wrinkled. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. I'm sorry to ambush you like this, she said as I ushered her inside. I just didn't know where else to go. I led her to the comfortable seating area where we usually met with clients, then went to the small kitchenette to make tea. When I returned, she was studying the project boards lining the walls, taking in the breadth and quality of the studio's work. These are really good, she said, surprise evident in her voice. I mean, I knew you were talented, but this is impressive. Elena. Thank you. I handed her a mug of tea and sat across from her. What happened with Blake? She sighed, cupping the warm mug between her hands. The same thing that always happens. His family, my family, expectations, appearances. She looked up, eyes troubled. Do you know we've never once made a decision based solely on what we want? It's always about what looks right, what advances our careers, what pleases our families. I listened quietly, giving her space to continue. After your presentation today, he called it naive idealism. Said you'd learn eventually that business is about profit, not purpose. Her lips twisted in a bitter smile. I defended you. Said. Maybe you understood something the rest of us had forgotten. That led to a bigger argument about our own choices, the life we've built. She trailed off, staring into her tea. And? I prompted gently. And I realized I don't know if I'm happy, Elena. The admission seemed to cost her something vital. I have everything I'm supposed to want. The career, the house, the husband, the status. But I don't know if any of it is what I actually want. The vulnerability in her voice struck me deeply. My perfect sister, always so certain, always so composed, was cracking open before my eyes, revealing doubts I never imagined. She harbored. What do you want? I asked simply. She laughed, a hollow sound. That's just it. I have no idea. I've spent so long chasing the Crawford definition of success that I never developed one of my own. She looked around the studio again, taking in the space I had created. Not like you did. It wasn't easy, I said quietly. Choosing a different path. Being the family disappointment. You were never a disappointment, she said, surprising me. You were a mystery. We couldn't understand you, but part of me always envied your certainty, your willingness to follow your own vision even when it meant standing alone. I studied my sister, seeing her clearly perhaps for the first time. Not as the golden child, the achiever, the embodiment of Crawford's success, but as a woman struggling with the weight of expectations, questioning the foundations of the life she had built. It's not too late, you know, I said, to figure out what you want, to make changes. She looked skeptical. At 34? With a mortgage and a career and a marriage all built around certain expectations? At any age. That's what I'm learning. I leaned forward, suddenly passionate about reaching her. The hardest part isn't making changes, Vanessa. It's giving yourself permission to want something different than what you've been told to want. She was quiet for a long moment, considering this. How did you know what you really wanted? I thought back to my own journey, the years of feeling less than, the gradual discovery of my own path. I paid attention to when I felt most alive, most myself. Not happiest, necessarily, but most authentic. For me, that was when I was creating, building something from nothing. And for me, she asked, almost to herself. I can't answer that. Only you can. But I think it starts with giving yourself space to question, to explore without judgment. We talked for hours that night, deeper than we ever had before. I texted Maya to reschedule, sensing that this unexpected connection with my sister was too important to cut short. Vanessa shared doubts and dreams she had never voiced aloud, pieces of herself she had buried beneath the perfect Crawford daughter facade. I shared too, the struggles of building my business, the lonely years of being the family outsider, the complicated feelings that came with Grandpa Joseph's inheritance. Not to make her feel guilty, but to show her that different paths came with their own challenges, that there were no perfect choices. By the time she left, something fundamental had shifted between us. Not resolution, her questions were too big for a single night's conversation, but recognition. For the first time, we saw each other not as competitors or opposites, but as sisters with more in common than we had ever acknowledged. The next morning, I woke early, mind still processing the unexpected vulnerability Vanessa had shown. I made coffee and stood by my apartment window, watching the city come alive as the sun rose. My phone buzzed with a text from her, "Thank you for last night. I'm taking your advice, giving myself permission to question. Starting with a week off work to think. Don't tell anyone yet." I smiled, oddly proud of her courage. "Your secret's safe with me. Call if you need anything." Setting my phone aside, I finished my coffee and got ready for the day ahead. At the studio, I found Mia already at work, putting the finishing touches on presentations for our afternoon meetings. "You look thoughtful," she observed as I hung up my coat. "Just reflecting on changes," I said. "How things that seem fixed can suddenly shift." She nodded sagely. "Like you taking on this Crawford project after years of keeping your distance from the family business?" "Something like that." The day unfolded in its now familiar rhythm: client meetings, design reviews, strategy sessions with my team. But beneath the routine, I felt a new current of possibility, not just for myself but for my sister, for my family, for the connections between us all. That evening, I had dinner with my parents at their home, a monthly tradition we had established. After the yacht trip, my mother had made her specialty, beef bourguignon, and my father had opened a bottle of wine from the year I was born. Small gestures of inclusion that meant more than they could know. "The board was impressed with your presentation yesterday," my father said as we ate. "Jeffrey hasn't stopped talking about it." My mother smiled. "He called it inspired." "Hi. Praise from your uncle." "It's a good project," I said simply. "It honors what Crawford Holdings was meant to be." "What it can be again," my father corrected gently. "Thanks to you." After dinner, as my mother cleared the plates, refusing my offers of help with her usual insistence on hosting properly, my father invited me into his study. This room had once been intimidating, the inner sanctum where important Crawford business happened, where I had always felt like an intruder. Now he gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs, pouring us each a small glass of scotch. "I have something for you," he said, opening his desk drawer. He withdrew a small wooden box, polished with age and handling. "This belonged to your grandfather. I found it when going through some old files recently." He placed it in my hands. The box was heavier than it looked, the wood warm to the touch. I opened it carefully to find a pocket watch nestled on velvet, gold, antique, the cover engraved with intricate patterns surrounding a simple message, "In your own time." "He carried this everywhere," my father explained. "It was his father's before him, and his grandfather's before that. The family story is that it was given to the first Crawford who came to this country, a reminder that success comes to those who move at their own pace, not anyone else's." I ran my finger over the engraving, emotion tightening my throat. "Why? Didn't he leave it to you?" My father smiled ruefully. "He tried. But I was too impatient then, too focused on doing everything faster, bigger. I didn't understand its meaning." He looked at me with quiet certainty. "He would have wanted you to have it now." I closed the box carefully, the weight of legacy and understanding heavy in my hands. "Thank you. I haven't always been the father you deserved," he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. "I tried to make you into something you weren't, couldn't see the value in the person you actually are." "Dad," I began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. I'm trying to say that I was wrong. And that I'm proud of you, Elena. Not because of the money or your seat on the board or even this new project. I'm proud of you for having the courage to find your own path when everyone around you was pointing in a different direction." The words I had waited decades to hear, coming now when I no longer needed them desperately but could appreciate them fully. I blinked back tears, accepting this gift as valuable as the watch, as meaningful as Grandpa Joseph's inheritance. "Thank you," I said simply. That means a lot. We sat in comfortable silence, sipping scotch, the barriers between us not gone but lowered enough to see each other clearly across them. Not perfect understanding, but genuine respect, a foundation for whatever came next. When I left that night, the wooden box tucked safely in my bag, I drove not to my apartment but to the studio. The space was dark and quiet, but it welcomed me like an old friend as I turned on a single lamp and sat at my desk. I opened the box again, taking out the pocket watch, feeling its weight and history in my palm. In your own time? Such a simple message, but one that had guided me even before I knew of its existence. The courage to move at my own pace, to build in my own way, to define success in terms that resonated with my deepest self. In the quiet of the studio, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built, I felt a profound sense of alignment, past and present, family legacy and personal vision, the Crawford name and my own identity, all finding harmony not through compromise, but through authenticity. Whatever came next, the community development project, the growing design studio, the evolving relationships with my family, I would navigate it in my own time, at my own pace, guided by values that were both inherited and chosen, both traditional and revolutionary. The watch ticked steadily in my hand, marking not just seconds but generations, a lineage of possibility that had found its way to me through unexpected channels. In that moment, I understood that my grandfather's greatest gift hadn't been financial security or business opportunities. It had been the example of living authentically, of measuring success not by external standards but by internal resonance. That was the true inheritance, more valuable than any portfolio or property. And it was one I intended to honor, in my own time, in my own way, for all the days to come. 1 year later, I stood on the unfinished rooftop of what would become the Crawford Community Center, the flagship project of our new initiative. The spring breeze ruffled my hair as I looked out over the neighborhood, a once neglected area now showing signs of thoughtful renewal. Not gentrification that pushed out long-time residents, but revitalization that included them in the process, that built upon existing community strengths rather than erasing them. What do you think? The voice belonged to Marcus Johnson, the community organizer who had become my partner in this project, challenging my ideas, expanding my vision, keeping me accountable to the people this center would serve. I think it's even better than I imagined, I replied honestly. The building below us was taking shape, not a sterile corporate space, but a warm, welcoming structure that incorporated elements of the neighborhood's cultural heritage. Local artists had designed the mosaic entrance. Sustainable materials had been sourced from businesses within the city. Even the construction crew included trainees from the community's workforce development program. The residents are excited, Marcus said, moving to stand beside me at the edge of the roof. Especially about the rooftop garden and the youth entrepreneurship space. Those had been his suggestions, practical additions that transformed the building from simply attractive to genuinely useful. Marcus had taught me the difference between designing for a community and designing with one. We couldn't have done this without you, I acknowledged. Your insights have been invaluable. He smiled, the afternoon sun highlighting the gray at his temples. At 53, Marcus had spent decades advocating for this neighborhood, often feeling like his voice went unheard by developers and city officials. Our partnership had been tentative at first, he suspicious of the Crawford name, me uncertain. How to navigate community dynamics I hadn't grown up with. But over months of listening and learning from each other, genuine respect had grown. I couldn't have done it without you either, he said simply. Most developers wouldn't have taken the risk on this neighborhood, wouldn't have been willing to prioritize community needs over maximum profit. I'm not most developers. No, he agreed with a chuckle. You're definitely not. We made our way back down to the main floor, where the project team was gathering for our weekly update. Architects, contractors, community representatives, and Crawford Holdings staff filled the temporary conference room set up in what would eventually become the community kitchen. As the meeting progressed, I felt a familiar sense of pride. Not just in the building taking shape around us, but in the collaborative process we had created. Each voice was heard, each perspective valued. This wasn't the Crawford way I had grown up with, where decisions came from the top and flowed downward. It was something new, something better. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text from Vanessa, running late. Save me a seat. Another surprise in a year full of them. After our heart-to-heart in my studio, my sister had indeed taken time off to reflect on her life choices. What had started as a week had extended into a month, then culminated in a major decision, stepping back from her executive role at the investment firm to pursue a master's degree in urban planning. The family had been shocked, none more than Blake, who eventually decided his wife's midlife crisis, his words, was incompatible with his 5-year career plan. Their divorce had been finalized 4 months ago, amicable but firm. Vanessa had moved into a modest apartment near campus, embracing student life with unexpected enthusiasm. Even more surprising, she had asked to join the Crawford Community Designs team part-time, wanting to apply her new knowledge in a practical setting. Working together had been awkward at first, our old patterns of competition threatening to resurface. But gradually we had found a rhythm, her analytical skills complementing my creative approach. The conference room door opened, and Vanessa slipped in, looking nothing like the polished executive she had been a year ago. Her hair was shorter, her clothes casual but professional, her face free of the heavy makeup she had once considered essential. She caught my eye and smiled as she took the empty seat I had saved. After the meeting, as the team dispersed to various tasks, she pulled me aside. "I need your feedback on something," she said, unusual hesitation in her voice. "I've been working on a proposal for my urban planning thesis, and it connects to what we're doing here." She handed me a folder containing a thoughtfully developed plan for expanding the community center concept throughout the city, creating a network of spaces that could serve diverse neighborhoods while remaining financially sustainable. "Vanessa, this is excellent," I said after reading it, genuinely impressed. "The financial modeling is especially strong." She smiled, pleasure evident in her expression. "That's still my area of expertise. But I wanted your perspective on the design philosophy. Does it align with your vision for Crawford Community Designs?" The question revealed how far we had come, from sisters who barely communicated to colleagues who valued each other's professional opinion. "It does," I assured her. "But more importantly, it expands on it in ways I hadn't considered. This network approach could multiply our impact." We spent the next hour refining her proposal, our different strengths creating something stronger than either of us could have developed alone. As we worked, I marveled at the transformation in my sister, not just in her appearance or career, but in her fundamental approach to life. She had found her own path, different from the one prescribed for her, and was walking it with growing confidence. "Have you shown this to Dad yet?" I asked as we finished. She shook her head. "You're the first. I wanted your feedback before presenting it to the family." The fact that she had come to me first, valued my opinion enough to seek it before anyone else's, meant more than I could express. "He'll be impressed," I predicted. "It's thoughtful, practical, and visionary, everything a Crawford project should be." "According to the new definition," she added with a smile. "The one you helped create." Later that afternoon, I met with a group of local teenagers who were part of the youth advisory board for the community center. They had strong opinions about the programming that should be offered, the way the space should function, the role they wanted to play in its operation. I listened carefully, taking notes, respecting their expertise about their own needs and desires. "Miss Crawford," said Darius, a 16-year-old with ambitions to become an architect himself, "will there really be a design studio in the building where we can learn professional skills?" "Absolutely," I confirmed. "Equipped with the same technology my own studio uses. And we'll have practicing designers coming in to mentor interested students." "Like you?" asked Letitia, who had shown remarkable talent for graphic design during our planning sessions. "Like me," I nodded, "and like my team. But also like designers from different backgrounds, with different specialties. You deserve access to diverse perspectives." Their excitement was palpable, their questions thoughtful and practical. These weren't passive recipients of corporate charity, they were active partners in creating a space that would serve their community for years to come. Working with them had been one of the most rewarding aspects of this project, a reminder of why it mattered beyond business metrics or family legacy. After the meeting, I drove back to Jules Reed's studio, where my team was working on several projects. Simultaneously, the community center branding, a campaign for a sustainable fashion client, packaging for an ethical chocolate company. The space hummed with creative energy, designers moving between workstations, the walls covered with concept boards and inspiration images. Mia looked up from her computer as I entered. "How was the site visit?" "Productive. The construction is on schedule, and the Youth Advisory Board had excellent input on the final details." She nodded approvingly. And how's Vanessa doing with the transition from corporate shark to urban planning student? I laughed at her blunt characterization. Better than anyone expected, including herself. She's developing some interesting ideas for expanding the community center model. Good for her, Mia said sincerely. It takes courage to start over like that. It does, I agreed, thinking about my sister's journey. From golden child to questioning adult, from following prescribed paths to charting her own course. The changes hadn't been easy, the divorce, the career shift, the adjustment to a more modest lifestyle, but I had never seen her more genuinely herself. My phone rang, my father's ringtone. I need to take this, I told Mia, stepping into my office. Elena, he said when I answered, his voice tight with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. I just got off the phone with Pacific National Bank. They've approved our loan application for Phase 2 of the Community Development Project. That's excellent news, I said, surprised by his call. Financing updates usually came through formal channels, not personal phone calls. But isn't this something that could have waited for tomorrow's meeting? He cleared his throat. The approval came with a specific note from their loan committee. They mentioned the strength of our community engagement model and the innovative approach to sustainable development. They specifically cited your leadership as a deciding factor. Now I understood the emotion in his voice, pride, perhaps, or vindication. The Pacific National loan had been a point of contention between us. My father had wanted to approach our usual financial partners, offering the Crawford name and history as security. I had insisted on going to Pacific National, a bank with a strong track record of community investment, even though we had no existing relationship with them. That's gratifying to hear, I said carefully. You were right, he said simply. Your approach was better. Coming from my father, this was an extraordinary statement. Martin Crawford rarely admitted when others had better ideas, especially when those ideas contradicted his established methods. Thank you for telling me, I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. There's something else, he continued. The executive committee is meeting next week to discuss leadership succession planning. I'd like you to attend. I sat down slowly, understanding the significance of this invitation. Succession planning at Crawford Holdings had always been a closely guarded process, with decisions made by a small circle of senior family members. My father and uncle had been grooming their chosen successors for years, traditionally male cousins with finance backgrounds and conventional views of the business. Are you sure? I asked. That's usually your domain. It's time for new perspectives, he replied. Your work with Crawford Community Designs has demonstrated what's possible when we think differently. The company needs that vision going forward. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, processing the conversation. Not so long ago, I had been the family disappointment, the creative one who couldn't seem to find her place in the Crawford world. Now I was being invited into discussions about the company's future leadership. Not because I had changed who I was, but because I had remained true to myself until the world around me began to see the value in a different approach. My desk phone buzzed, Zoe letting me know my next appointment had arrived. I took a moment to collect myself, then went to greet Bianca, my very first client, whose bakery had now expanded to 3 locations and was launching a line of packaged goods that needed branding. Elena. She embraced me warmly. The new space is gorgeous. Success looks good on you. We settled in the client area, reviewing the concepts my team had developed for her product line. The conversation flowed easily between professional feedback and friendly catching up. This was how I had always wanted to work, building long-term relationships with clients who became partners in the creative process, whose success became intertwined with my own. I have to ask, Bianca said as we wrapped up, are you still taking on small businesses like mine? I've been recommending you to everyone, but someone said you're focused on bigger corporate clients now that your family's company is involved. That's absolutely not true, I assured her. Jules Reed Studio remains independent, and will always work with clients we believe in, regardless of size. The Crawford project is separate. She looked relieved. Good. Because what I've always valued about working with you is that you treat my little bakery with the same care and creativity you'd give to a massive corporation. That will never change, I promised. It's the foundation of everything we do here. After Bianca left, I found myself reflecting on the parallel tracks my professional life had taken, the established family business where I was creating change from within, and the independent studio I had built from scratch. Different worlds? Different approaches, but increasingly informed by the same core values. That evening, I had dinner plans with Maya, our monthly catch-up that had become sacred time for both of us despite increasingly busy schedules. We met at a new restaurant in my neighborhood, the kind of place that served locally sourced food in a casual atmosphere, where conversations could flow without interruption. "So," she said after we had ordered, "how's life as a Crawford dynasty reformer?" I laughed at her characterization. "Challenging. Rewarding. Complicated. The Elena Crawford specialty," she teased. "You never could do anything the simple way." Says the woman who just left a perfectly good law firm partnership to start a non-profit legal clinic. Maya grinned. "Touché. But seriously, are you happy with how things are going? The community center, the family business, all of it?" I considered the question carefully. Happiness had never been my primary goal, purpose had always mattered more, the sense that I was building something meaningful. But lately, I had noticed a deeper satisfaction emerging alongside that purpose, a feeling of alignment between who I was and what I was creating in the world. "I am," I said simply. "Not because everything's perfect, it's not. There are still battles within the family, resistance to change, moments when I wonder if it's worth the effort. But I'm doing work that matters, on my own terms. That feels right." Maya studied me over her wine glass. "You've changed this past year. Not in who you are, you've always been stubborn and principled to a fault. But in how you carry yourself. Like you finally believe what some of us have known all along, that your way of seeing the world has value." Her observation struck home. The change she had noticed wasn't about external success or validation, but about internal certainty. The confidence that came not from proving others wrong, but from living according to my own truth regardless of outside opinion. "The funny thing is," I mused, "I spent so many years trying to get my family to see me, to value my perspective. Now that they finally do, I realize their validation was never actually the point." "What was the point, then?" "Building something true," I said after a moment. "Creating spaces, literal and metaphorical, where people can be fully themselves. Including me." The conversation shifted to Maya's work, her recent decision to leave corporate law for public interest practice, the clinic she was establishing to serve clients who couldn't afford traditional legal representation. Like me, she was finding her own path, one that honored her values even when it diverged from conventional measures of success. As we parted after dinner, she hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, you know. Not because of the Crawford name or the community center or any of that. I'm proud of how you've stayed yourself through all of it." Her words echoed in my mind as I walked home through the quiet streets of my neighborhood. Stayed myself. Such a simple concept, yet so difficult in practice, especially when surrounded by powerful narratives about who you should be and what success should look like. My apartment welcomed me with familiar comfort, no longer the small studio I had once occupied, but a thoughtfully designed space in a converted industrial building, with high ceilings and walls lined with art collected over years. I had moved 6 months ago, not because I felt pressure to upgrade my lifestyle, but because I genuinely wanted more room for my growing collection of books and art, a proper home office, space to host friends and family. On my desk sat Grandpa Joseph's pocket watch and its wooden box, a daily reminder of his philosophy, "In your own time." Beside it was a framed photo from the groundbreaking ceremony for the community center, me standing with Marcus, Vanessa, my father, and members of the youth advisory board, all holding shovels and smiling beneath a banner that read, "Building Together." I picked up the watch, feeling its solid weight in my palm. The mechanism still kept perfect time, a testament to craftsmanship that valued longevity over fashion, substance over appearance. Like the values Grandpa Joseph had lived by, the ones he had quietly nurtured in me during those Sunday afternoons. In his study, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Dinner at my place this Sunday? The whole family will be there, plus some news I want to share." I smiled, curious about her news. My cousin had been making her own changes lately, stepping back from the law career her parents had chosen for her, exploring the environmental advocacy she had always been passionate about. Another Crawford finding her authentic path, inspired. Perhaps by seeing that divergence from family expectations didn't have to mean exclusion. "Wouldn't miss it," I texted back. Setting my phone aside, I moved to the window overlooking the city lights. From here, I could see the downtown skyline where Crawford Holdings occupied the top floors of a glass tower. I could also see the neighborhood. Where the community center was rising, where a different kind of Crawford legacy was taking shape. The journey from that birthday party a year and a half ago, from Vanessa's dismissive comment about what I could afford to the revelation of the platinum Amex, had taken me places I never expected. Not just to Mediterranean yachts or board meetings, but to a deeper understanding of wealth in all its forms, financial security, yes, but also meaningful work, authentic relationships, the courage to live according to one's own values. The real turning point hadn't been the moment I revealed my financial status. It had been all the moments before that, the quiet choices to build my own path, to define success on my own terms, to remain true to my vision even when it meant standing alone. The money had simply made visible what had always been true. That worth isn't determined by bank balances or family names, but by the alignment between who you are and how you live. As I turned away from the window, I caught sight of my reflection, not the unsure young woman who had once felt invisible at family gatherings, nor the defiant outsider proving a point, but someone more integrated, more whole. Elena Crawford. Jules Reed. Both and neither, defined not by circumstances or expectations but by choices and values. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the community center construction, the succession planning meeting, client projects at the studio. But I would face them from this place of centeredness, this knowledge that the path forward was neither rejection of my family legacy nor complete embrace of it, but something more nuanced, a reimagining of what that legacy could mean for a new generation. In the end, the Platinum Amex had been merely a symbol, a catalyst for conversations too long deferred. The real wealth lay elsewhere, in the courage to build a life of meaning, in the wisdom to define success beyond material measures, in the freedom to move at one's own pace toward authentic purpose. That was an inheritance beyond price. And one I intended to honor, in my own way, in my own time, with every choice that lay ahead. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.